Thank you for tuning into Ray-ality TV. I'm Ray Bakari. Joining me today is the new executive director for the Rhode Island Republican Party, Aidan Carey. Aidan, how are you today?
Good, Ray. How are you? Good to be with you.
I'm doing great, and thank you for giving me your time for this. So you're now in this position of leadership within the party. This was announced a few days ago by Chairman Joe Powers. What's that feeling like now being in the role of executive director?
Well, I'm still really just getting used to the position and everything that comes with it. It's been a wild ride. I've been involved in the party for several years now, but now culminating in this, getting really in the weeds of operations. It's a great feeling, but it's coming with a lot of responsibility. It's going to take some time to adjust to.
And for those watching, can you explain what your origins with the party are, how you first got involved, and then eventually got into this role?
Yeah, so there's not a time where I can remember I haven't been interested in politics. And for a few years now, I've really leaned into local activism and local politics. But what really led me there are my studies. I graduated from the College of the Holy Cross just in May. My focus is in what you might call qualitative political science. And what we're assessing there are the really deep questions about what we do as a political community and how to achieve that, and the nature of that, of freedom, the nature of liberty, the nature of our government, its institutions, how these act with one another. And to me, the logical conclusion to all that is that if I really believe in those things and the theoretical aspects of political action, political organization, you really need to get involved, get in the weeds of that. That's the best case study that you can really have. And so in January of last year, after being on the Republican Town Committee in Lincoln for a few years, I decided to take the mantle of being the chair. And for the past year and a half, we built up that committee into I would say, a pretty professional team of politicos from across the town, with one goal in mind, electing Republican candidates and serving, I would also say, serving the needs of the Republican Party members in the town of Lincoln. The way I got involved in that is kind of odd. I started a few years ago. There was a vacancy at the state level in the vice chair position at the state. And so here I am, an 18-year-old kid going to apply for that. And I remember, of course, because that's what you do at that age. And I remember Sue Cienki and the nominating committee kind of looking at me with raised eyebrows, but it played out well. Sue actually invited me onto the state committee as an at-large delegate. And that's how I really got to know the people in the party, got to work with them. And then just a couple of weeks ago, Jesus Solorio, great guy. He left the party to pursue new things. And so we had a vacancy that needed filling. I felt I had the qualifications to do it. I put myself out there, put myself forward, and lo and behold, here I am.
In this new position, do you still get to chair the Lincoln Republican Town Committee?
At the moment, I am still currently chairing it, although my own view on that is that since I'm supposed to be an impartial service provider to all the members of the party, I should probably let go of the town committee there and eliminate what could be a conflict of interest there. So I plan to transition out as chair by the end of the month.
And for those watching, can you explain what the responsibilities of executive director for the RI GOP are?
Sure. It's really very simple. I am here to be an impartial service provider to the party members, the candidates, the elected officials, everything to do with the institutional Republican Party, that organization. So my focus is going to be on operations. It's going to be on the day-to-day management of our offices, our facilities, as well as relationship management to make sure that between our candidates, our elected officials, just about as many stakeholders as you can imagine are coordinating with each other on the issues as we approach the campaign, all manner of things related.
And now let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about, the party itself and, this election cycle. You've been involved for a couple of years, as you mentioned earlier on. Where do you see areas of strength and weakness currently in the state party?
Well, certainly with the delegation that we do have at the General Assembly, and small as they are very it's a very solid delegation. They are committed to addressing the issues, and they are one of the strengths that we bring to the table. People with real conviction who are putting themselves out there for their constituents and their community. And you will find in the Republican Party, that's one of our strengths right now. And with that comes a particular commitment to grassroots organizing, grassroots efforts, reaching out to voters in communities and peoples who feel that they have not been touched by the political establishment over the past 80 years. Reaching out to those voters is where we have been particularly strong. Of course, there are hurdles that we still have to overcome. Rhode Island is as blue as it gets when it comes to New England. But nevertheless, I think telling voters, that we are here will be the first step to changing that.
So one area of improvement you'd say is better effectively getting out that message of
Right.
your platform? Got it. One thing we should also mention is, and you touched upon it a little bit, you're a young guy. I think we're about the same age. I'm currently turning 23 next month, and you graduated college not too long ago. So that, makes you a Gen Zer. We're coming up in politics, our generation. Is that something you have in mind when you're talking to fellow party members and, bringing that Gen Z perspective?
Well, I think that some of the folks on Twitter would have probably preferred it if I either had been balding or if I had gray hair. But no, look, we are in the midst of a quite significant generational shift in this country. Gen Z voters are of voting age, and they are interested in getting out and having their voice heard. We've seen that over the past few years. What we bring to the table with our youth, we are carrying the torch for the future generations that come. And to me, age shouldn't necessarily be an object when the qualifications that you have to actually do a job and fulfill that task and actually build upon what the prior generations have left behind. If all those boxes can be checked, there's no issue there. Although I understand, I do understand where people come from that. I face that as chair of the local party committee. It's always a shock to see really engaged young people involved in the political process. And I can understand that can be difficult for people, but that is the trajectory. That's our political trajectory over the next few years. A lot of young people are going to be coming in and taking these positions.
And one thing that parties, especially the state parties, are going to have to look at is how to effectively reach out to those voters. Despite them not being all registered Democrats, it's fair to say that a lot of the policies that most people in our age group support are currently being, how would I word this, promoted by the Democratic Party. It's a little bit of a weak spot for the GOP, both nationally and locally. From your perspective as a Gen Zer, how does the RI GOP effectively start to reach out to the Gen Zers?
Well, one of the things that I think has been especially poisonous to our political system is we started to come up with this idea that all groups of people, communities, peoples, whatever, are homogenous groups. But in each of them, there is an individual that's waiting for that direct contact that you can have with them to address the issues. I think what a lot of people in my generation and your generation are looking for is some authenticity in our leaders and elected officials, those who represent us. I think that right now in Rhode Island, that's what Republicans are offering. We're offering an authentic message. We are the ones that are committed to change, and we're committed to that without compromise. And so with that being the case, I think that the key to picking up some more of those votes is going to be young guys representing us at the state level. And that's going to be hurdles to overcome for those young guys who do run for office or young gals that do run for office. But that's what people are looking for. And you'll also understand that in Lincoln, when I was chair, we have probably one of the youngest state senators representing us as a Republican, Senator Paolino. And, that has never been a barrier to him doing his job.
But aside from Gen Zers, another voting group that the state GOP struggle to attract are minority voters and women voters, particularly the suburban women voters. We're seeing that nationally. It's swung even harder since 2018. How do those trends get reversed?
Well, it's going to have to take being focused on the kitchen table issues. I know a lot is going on right now in the national climate. But the elections that are coming up in Rhode Island are not about Washington, D.C. They're about Woonsocket. They're about Westerly. Okay. The fact of the matter is this: working families and suburban families are struggling. It is true that the statistics are showing improvement in our economy and improvement in inflation. What that doesn't account for are the past 4 to 5 years that families have had to struggle with tighter budgets, less opportunity for themselves and their kids, higher costs. Compounded over time, all of these things are recipes for disaster. And so even though we're starting to turn to the next page on those issues, fixing what's been going on over the past 4 to 5 years with the economy, it's not going to happen overnight. But by reaching out to voters in that sense, by really hitting on those kitchen table issues, worried about food on people's tables and good pay from work, I think we will be able to break those barriers, those traditional barriers for Republicans.
Now let's talk about some of the key races happening this year. It's a presidential election year. So aside from that, let's focus on Rhode Island. One of them is every General Assembly seat is up this year in the state House and the state Senate. There are a lot uncontested, but there are a couple of seats that there are some Republicans running. What are some of the top ones on your radar?
Oh, well, we're looking at all of them, but I would particularly say, Jen Caputi in District 26 in Cranston. That's a target seat. We have Angelo Capsamalis in District 46, Alan Myers down in Tiverton, District 10, Karen Gorman, District 25 Johnson. I mean, we have candidates lined up for a number of key seats that we think that Republicans can really pick up. And I think what's going to be the key to that success is a good ground game that the state party can help provide these candidates, and outreach to the voters about the issues that count today.
A little bit higher on that ticket is going to be a U.S. Senate race. There's currently quite a bit of an interesting primary going on between Ray McKay and State Rep Patricia Morgan, former gubernatorial candidate as well. Not going to ask who you support because you have to remain impartial, but I mean, there's a competitive primary, and then you have that November election. Whoever's coming out of this primary is going to come out, with some battle scars, metaphorically, going into a federal race in Rhode Island, which the state typically goes blue on the federal level. So, what does the party got to do post-primary to flip that Senate seat?
And so I will say this, both Ray and Patricia are great people. Patricia's been a great fighter up on Smith Hill, and Ray is a great party builder. And so I do think we're very lucky to have the two candidates that we have in primary, that it's them. We are very lucky. What I would say is this. We have to worry about that after the primary concludes, because we don't know who necessarily we're going to be working with when it comes to that. But what I would say is this, again, it's consistent. Republicans have to run down the ballot, and it has to be about all the candidates that we have to offer this election cycle coming together and uniting and sharing their resources with each other. If we're going to really try to flip seats in the GA, flip seats in the U.S. Senate, I'm very interested to see where that goes ahead. But for the moment, we're waiting until after the primary to really get in the weeds of that.
And if we're going to talk about competitive GOP primaries, we can't let Cranston mayor go unspoken. You have Mayor Ken Hopkins, the incumbent, being primaried by State Rep Barbara Ann Fenton Fung of House District 15. I guess, same kind of question with that. There's no Democratic primary, so Councilman Ferry's in general election mode right now, and you have two Republicans duking it out in what's quite a bit of a messy primary.
Yep, and I've been watching that very closely. Again, you have Ken Hopkins, great guy, and Rep Fenton Fung, great lady, great fighters for the party. And of course, what makes this even a bit more interesting is that Cranston is the traditional target for Republicans in Rhode Island, and it will probably continue to remain so. So we're very focused on the results of that primary. Again, that's going to determine how we approach the various elections throughout Cranston in the upcoming election cycle. But I can only say again that with that particular focus, grassroots outreach, grassroots organization, joint fundraising, that's how we're going to get Republicans over the finish line. No matter how primaries conclude, it's going to take those things in the months ahead to really get over the finish line in November.
In the past couple of election cycles, I'm glad you actually brought up some strategy talk toward the end of there, because I want to talk about this for my next question. The Republicans get outworked when it comes to the mail ballots. What's the game plan this time around? I know you're just in the role, but do you have anything on mind?
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to do everything we can to bank people's vote. We are recommending that if you need to vote by mail, that you do so. If you need to go vote early, you do so. And we are going to provide as many resources as we can, leverage all the resources that either come from the RNC to encourage that effort, or come from the State Board of Elections, or I know Secretary of State Amori's office has been engaged in outreach efforts. We're going to try to leverage all that because at the end of the day, Rhode Island voters should just know that when they go to the ballot box or when they cast their vote by mail, that's going to be part of the effort to turning this state around. So we are recommending that. We're recommending that people go out and bank their votes. And over the next couple of weeks, you'll probably see more initiatives from the Republican Party in that area.
You're currently still residing in Lincoln.
I am.
So, what are some key races in Lincoln, since that's in your backyard, that should be mentioned?
Well, we are looking again at District 17, not so much on the Republican side. Senator Paolino's been there for several years, but there is a quite contentious Democratic primary going on. And so I'm watching those results very, very carefully. I'd be interested to see who comes out of that unscathed. But we are also shooting for District 44. We have Peter Trematozzi running against Rep. Constantino. The last election, he only lost by about 600 votes. Well, that's a seat that we can capture. And I would also say District Rep 46. That's another seat that we're looking at again. That encompasses almost all of Lincoln. And so Lincoln is one of those strange cities or towns that it used to be a deeply, deeply red town and has become very purple in recent years with new development. So just looking in those demographics, it's going to be a very interesting race up in the Blackstone Valley, just across the board.
Especially you got other Blackstone Valley area municipalities, Cumberland and Pawtucket, having some interesting mayoral races. But for House 46, can you remind me who's running in that? I know House 45 is Rep. Ackerman. She doesn't have an opponent. Who's in House 46?
House 46, currently Marianne Shallcross-Smith is the incumbent.
And then you're the Republican candidate?
Angelo Kapsamalis.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I got one more like party focused question, and then we'll go to a final non-political one. Aside from the economy, are there any other policy goals that the party plans to focus on this election cycle that should be of note?
Yes, government accountability is a big issue for Rhode Island Republicans. It has been a big issue for a very long time, but even more so since the Washington Bridge debacle, everything that's come from that, and just general issues. We're also worried about the Constitutional Convention. We will probably have a position coming out in a few weeks about how exactly the party feels about that. But again, as I see it, that's an opportunity for the voters to decide whether or not they want a constitutional convention. And one of those issues can be government accountability. And so we are very much focused on that issue alongside the economy. What I will say is this, since I brought it up with the Washington Bridge crisis, I'm aware that over the past few days, the AG Noronha filed a lawsuit against 13 different companies that had something to do with the Washington Bridge crisis. And I'm actually very satisfied with that outcome. I know that the AG had been looking for that authority for some time from the governor, and I'm glad that he got it at long last, and that's a good first step in the right direction. But the other side of it, we really need to see accountability from the governor's office. You know, when the governor promised a day of reckoning, I think the voters were on the same page, you know, when it came to the actual words of that promise. I think the voters were looking for a day of reckoning too. But I think that that day of reckoning also needs to highlight on the actions of our leaders in the lead up to that crisis. And I think that's where they're really looking for accountability from Smith Hill.
And now shifting to a final non-political topic, I like to ask everyone this on the show to keep the tradition going. In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Oh, that's a tough question, but I'll keep it friendly. I would say coffee milk.
That's a good one. And that's all the questions I had. Aidan, thank you again for giving me your time for this. I really appreciate it.
Ray, thank you very much.
And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. To see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you next time.